October 19, 1943. Mediterranean Sea. Submarine control room 60 meters below surface, 8 nautical miles southwest of the Italian coast. The chronometer showed 22:47:30, 30 seconds remaining. The executive officer stood behind the attack periscope, hands gripping the handles. His eye pressed against the eyepiece. The targeting solution had been calculated, verified, and loaded into the torpedo data computer. 4 bow tubes were flooded and ready. Outer doors were open. Gyro angles were set. Range, 1,200 yards. Target speed, 8 knots. Course steady. In the forward torpedo room, 4 men stood at their stations. Firing keys were armed. Green indicator lights glowed. Air pressure was correct. All systems showed ready status. The torpedoman first class held his hand above the firing lever for tube 1. He watched the repeater dial. 20 seconds. The captain stood at the plotting table. He said nothing. His arms were folded across his chest. The control room was silent except for the ventilation system and the quiet hum of electrical equipment. No one moved. 15 seconds. The executive officer did not step away from the periscope. The crosshairs remained centered on the target, a cargo vessel showing running lights moving north through calm seas. 10 seconds. 5. The chronometer advanced. 0. No order was given. The firing keys remained untouched. The torpedoes stayed in their tubes. The submarine was USS Grouper, a Gato-class fleet boat on her third war patrol out of Algiers. She had departed 14 days earlier with orders to interdict enemy supply traffic between Sicily and the Italian mainland. Her patrol area covered the approaches to Naples and Salerno. German and Italian shipping remained active despite Allied advances on the peninsula. The objective was to sink tonnage and disrupt logistics supporting Axis forces. The target had been detected at 21:15 hours. A single merchant vessel of approximately 4,000 tons, traveling without escort. Sonar identified slow reciprocating engines. Visual observation through the periscope confirmed a cargo configuration. Single stack amidships, raised bridge forward, derrick booms visible against the twilight sky. No armament was evident. The vessel displayed navigation lights in accordance with international maritime practice for neutral or civilian ships. This was unusual. Axis military transports typically operated darkened. Grouper had maneuvered into attack position over 90 minutes. The approach had been methodical. Speed was kept low to minimize noise. Depth was adjusted to maintain periscope observation while avoiding detection. The fire control party had tracked the target continuously, updating course, speed, and range. By 22:30, the submarine was positioned ahead of the target's track with optimal firing geometry. The captain had ordered battle stations at 22:15. All preparations were complete by 22:40. The crew numbered 74 men. Most had been together since the submarine's commissioning 18 months earlier. They had completed 2 previous patrols, one off the Aleutians, one in the central Mediterranean. Results had been mixed: 2 confirmed sinkings, several attacks that missed or malfunctioned, many days of tedious patrol with no contact. This was standard for submarine warfare. Opportunities were infrequent. When they occurred, execution had to be precise. Weather conditions were favorable. Sea state was calm. Visibility was good under a quarter moon. No other vessels were detected within sonar range. No aircraft had been observed. The tactical situation was ideal. The target was unaware, undefended, and within optimal firing range. Everything indicated a straightforward attack. U.S. Navy submarine doctrine in 1943 emphasized aggressive prosecution of targets. Standing orders directed commanders to sink enemy and enemy-occupied shipping wherever encountered. Cargo vessels were priority targets. Even small tonnage contributed to enemy logistics. Every ship sunk reduced the flow of supplies, equipment, and reinforcements. The cumulative effect was strategic. This understanding shaped operational directives and command expectations. The captain had received standard briefings before departure. Rules of engagement were clear. Attack all vessels flying enemy flags or operating under enemy control. Neutral vessels were to be avoided. Hospital ships and clearly marked relief vessels were protected under international law. Beyond those limitations, commanders exercised discretion. When identification was uncertain, doctrine favored attack. The presumption was that vessels operating in combat zones were legitimate targets. The executive officer had conducted attack training exercises dozens of times. The sequence was ingrained. Establish firing position, calculate targeting solution, verify tube readiness, obtain captain's approval, execute firing order. The process took minutes under ideal conditions, longer if complications arose. Tonight there had been no complications. The approach was textbook. The solution was solid. Probability of hit was estimated above 70% with a four-torpedo spread. Torpedo performance had improved since early war failures. The Mark 14 torpedo, after extensive modification, now functioned reliably. Magnetic exploders had been deactivated in favor of contact detonators. Depth keeping was accurate. Propulsion was dependable. A hit would likely result in catastrophic damage. A 4,000-ton freighter would sink within minutes. If the cargo included ammunition or fuel, secondary explosions were probable. The crew understood this. They had witnessed it on previous patrols. A successful attack produced visible results: explosions, fire, debris, lifeboats if the crew had time to launch them. Then the submarine would withdraw at speed to avoid counterattack. Return to periscope depth later to verify the sinking. Photograph the wreckage if possible. Record the tonnage in the patrol log. The process was mechanical, professional, necessary. Expectations were high. This was a clean setup. The target was vulnerable. The submarine was undetected. Conditions were perfect. The countdown had been initiated at 22:45. Standard procedure allowed 2 minutes for final verification before firing. The chronometer advanced steadily. Everyone waited for the captain's order. At 22:47:31, 1 second past the firing time, the captain spoke. He said, "Hold fire." The executive officer remained at the periscope. His hands did not move. He did not ask for clarification. The torpedoman in the forward room kept his hand above the firing lever but did not lower it. The fire control party maintained their stations. No one questioned the order. The captain stepped to the periscope. He did not ask the executive officer to move aside. He simply stood there close enough to look over his shoulder. The executive officer stepped back. The captain took the periscope. He observed for perhaps 20 seconds. Then he stepped back. He said, "Secure from battle stations. Rig for dive, take her down to 120 feet. Come right to course 90, speed 4 knots. The diving officer repeated the orders. The plainsmen adjusted their controls. The submarine began descending. The captain returned to the plotting table. He made no entry in the log. He said nothing further. The executive officer secured the periscope and stepped away. The control room crew resumed normal watch routine. The target continued north, unaware and untouched. The torpedoes remained unfired. The attack dissolved into nothing. The transition from battle stations to normal operations occurred without discussion. Men moved through their duties mechanically. The tension that had built during the approach and attack setup did not release cleanly. It simply dissipated into routine. Faces showed nothing. Questions were not asked. Orders were executed. In the forward torpedo room, the torpedomen secured the firing systems. They closed the outer tube doors and drained the tubes to equalize pressure. The process took 15 minutes. They worked in silence. The torpedoes remained loaded. They would stay that way until the next attack or until the patrol ended. No one commented on the aborted firing. The executive officer completed the watch entries in the control room log: course change, depth change, speed change. He noted the time as 22:51. He did not note the target, the attack setup, or the decision not to fire. Standard log format required entries only for actions taken, not actions withheld. The gap in the record was procedural, not deliberate. Below in the crew's quarters, off-watch personnel had been aware of battle stations. The announcement had been made over the intercom 90 minutes earlier. They had felt the submarine maneuvering, the slight changes in depth and angle that indicated approach and positioning. They had waited for the sound of torpedoes launching, the distinct thump and rush of compressed air that shook the boat. It had not come. Now they felt the submarine descending and turning away. The attack had ended without execution. No explanation filtered down. Time stretched in the peculiar way it does in submarines. Without visual reference to the surface, day and night lost meaning. The chronometer showed numbers. The watch rotations provided structure. But the feeling of time passing was subjective and elastic. Minutes after securing from battle stations felt longer than the 90 minutes of approach. The anticlimax was disorienting. By 23:30, the submarine had settled into patrol routine. The next watch relieved. The captain remained in the control room briefly, then retired to his cabin. The executive officer assumed watch command. Sonar maintained passive listening. No contacts were detected. The target had passed beyond range, continuing its journey north. The sea was empty again. The captain's written statement, filed with the patrol report upon return to Algiers on November 2, noted that the target displayed characteristics inconsistent with military transport. Specifically, the vessel showed full navigation lights, maintained steady course without evasive maneuvering, and exhibited no defensive armament. These factors suggested possible neutral status or protected classification. Additionally, intelligence briefings before patrol departure had mentioned increased use of hospital ships and Red Cross transports operating between Sicily and the mainland. These vessels were protected under Geneva Conventions. Attacking them would violate international law and standing U.S. Navy regulations. Identification markings for such ships included prominent red crosses on white backgrounds, illuminated at night. The captain's periscope observation at 22:47 had not clearly confirmed or ruled out such markings. The visual conditions, quarter moon, distance of 1,200 yards, brief observation time, did not permit definitive identification. The executive officer's earlier observations had focused on target parameters for fire control solution, not detailed visual inspection of hull markings. Standard procedure assumed that vessels operating in combat zones without escort were legitimate targets, but the display of navigation lights introduced doubt. Doctrine allowed commanders discretion when identification was uncertain. The conservative choice was to withhold fire until confirmation. The aggressive choice was to attack and accept the risk of error. Both were defensible under operational guidelines. The captain chose the former. His reasoning, as documented in the patrol report, was that potential violation of protected status outweighed the tactical value of sinking uncertain tonnage. This reasoning was operational, not moral. The calculation involved military regulations, potential consequences of policy violation, and assessment of target value. The decision was made in seconds, based on visual observation and situational judgment. It was not agonized over. It was not discussed. It was simply executed as command prerogative. The crew understood this in general terms. Submarine commanders operated with significant autonomy. Their decisions were not questioned in real time. After action, review might examine choices, but during operations, the captain's authority was absolute. If he decided not to fire, that decision stood. No justification was required. The crew returned to normal operations and awaited the next contact. Grouper remained on patrol for 11 more days. During that time, she made contact with 3 additional vessels. One was confirmed as a neutral Turkish freighter and was not engaged. One was a German coastal tanker that was attacked with 3 torpedoes, all missed due to incorrect depth settings. One was a small Italian motor vessel that submerged before an attack could be developed. The patrol concluded without confirmed sinkings. Return to Algiers was routine. The submarine moored on November 2. The captain submitted his patrol report the following day. The tonnage board reviewed the report and credited Grouper with no sinks and no damage. The aborted attack on October 19 was noted in the summary as contact broken off due to uncertain identification. No further inquiry was conducted. The decision was accepted as within operational norms. Crew debriefs were standard. No unusual incidents were reported. Morale was assessed as adequate. Equipment performance was satisfactory. The submarine required routine maintenance but no major repairs. Personnel rotations were processed. Several crew members transferred to new assignments. Replacements were assigned. Grouper prepared for her next patrol. The executive officer was reassigned to shore duty in December. His service record noted competent performance and readiness for command qualification. He eventually received his own submarine command in 1944. The captain remained with Grouper through 2 additional patrols, then transferred to squadron staff. His service record showed no disciplinary actions or negative evaluations. The October incident had no apparent impact on his career trajectory. Among the crew, the aborted attack was not discussed extensively. It became one event among many in the continuous routine of patrols. Some remembered it vaguely as the time they set up on a target and didn't shoot. Others forgot it entirely. There was no reason to dwell on attacks that did not occur. Attention focused on the operations that did proceed and the constant preparation for the next contact. The target vessel's identity was never confirmed. No post-war records conclusively identified what ship had been observed that night. It might have been a legitimate hospital ship. It might have been a neutral freighter. It might have been an Axis transport displaying false signals. The answer disappeared into the vast uncertainty of wartime operations. USS Grouper's patrol report for her 3rd war patrol is archived at the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. The document runs 47 pages including appendices. The October 19 contact appears on page 12 in a brief paragraph. No additional documentation exists. The captain's logs, which might have contained more detail, were not preserved. Standard procedure required only patrol reports to be retained permanently. Post-war analyses of submarine operations in the Mediterranean occasionally reference Grouper's 3rd patrol, but only in statistical summaries. The patrol is noted as producing 0 sinkings. It is not examined individually. No historical study has focused on the October 19 incident. The event lacks the elements that attract scholarly attention. No casualties, no combat action, no clear strategic impact. The absence of documentation is structural. Military records prioritize outcomes over decisions. Actions taken generate after-action reports, damage assessments, and casualty lists. Actions withheld generate nothing. The decision not to fire appears in the archive only as a brief notation explaining why a contact produced no result. The reasoning behind the decision occupies 2 sentences in the patrol report. Crew members who survived the war and were interviewed decades later for oral history projects occasionally mentioned Grouper, but rarely in detail. One torpedoman, interviewed in 1988, recalled the 3rd patrol as quiet, not much happening. He did not mention specific contacts. The executive officer, interviewed in 1992, remembered the captain as cautious, by-the-book good commander. He did not reference October 19. The silence is complete and unremarkable. Submarine patrols without significant action were common. Most patrols involved long periods of searching interspersed with brief contacts that often produced no results. The October 19 incident was one moment among thousands of similar moments across hundreds of patrols. It left no trace beyond administrative notation because there was nothing to trace. No violence occurred. No outcome resulted. The decision was made, and the submarine moved on. The captain retired from the Navy in 1958 with the rank of commander. His service included 4 war patrols as submarine commander and subsequent staff assignments. He received standard decorations for wartime service, but no specific commendations for individual actions. He worked in maritime insurance after retirement and died in 1981. His obituary in the Navy Times noted his submarine service, but provided no details of specific patrols or operations. The executive officer commanded 2 submarines during 1944 and 1945, completing 6 war patrols with moderate success. He remained in the Navy and retired as a captain in 1965. He participated in one oral history interview in 1992, discussing submarine operations generally but providing few specific anecdotes. He died in 1997. His personal papers, donated to a naval museum, contain service records and photographs but no diaries or detailed accounts of individual patrols. Of the 74 crew members aboard Grouper during the 3rd patrol, 12 were killed in action on subsequent assignments. 15 remained in the Navy and retired at various ranks. The remainder returned to civilian life after the war. None left documented accounts that reference the October 19 incident specifically. When veterans groups gathered in later decades, conversations focused on shared experiences, notable actions, and lost shipmates. Routine patrols and aborted attacks were not typically discussed. USS Grouper continued operations through 1945, completing 11 war patrols total. She was credited with 5 confirmed sinkings totaling approximately 18,000 tons. She survived the war and was decommissioned in 1946. She was sold for scrap in 1970. Her bell and other artifacts are preserved in a naval museum. Her patrol reports remain archived but are rarely accessed. She is not featured prominently in submarine warfare histories. The moment when the countdown reached 0 and nothing happened had no long-term impact on the individuals involved or the submarine's operational record. It was simply one decision among thousands made by submarine commanders during the war. Most of those decisions are unrecorded. This one survived in documentary form only because patrol reports required explanation for contacts that did not result in attacks. The Mediterranean Sea on the night of October 19, 1943 was calm and dark. A cargo vessel moved north at 8 knots, showing lights, unaware that 60 meters below the surface a submarine had positioned itself for attack. Torpedoes were ready. The targeting solution was calculated. The countdown advanced to 0, and then the submarine turned away, descended, and departed. The vessel continued its journey. No explosion occurred. No wreckage appeared. The sea remained undisturbed. What the vessel carried, where it was bound, and who operated it cannot be determined from available records. The submarine's crew did not know. The captain did not know with certainty. He made a judgment based on incomplete information and operational discretion. The judgment was to withhold fire. That decision left no mark on the ocean, no entry in casualty lists, no change in strategic calculations. The countdown reached 0. Nothing happened. The submarine moved on to other contacts, other patrols, other decisions. The crew rotated through assignments. The war continued. Years passed. The individuals involved aged, retired, died. The records remained filed and largely unexamined. The moment existed only in brief documentary notation, contact broken off due to uncertain identification. The silence is not meaningful. It is simply absence. An action that could have occurred did not occur. A shot that could have been fired was not fired. The reason was procedural and tactical. The outcome was nothing. And nothing requires no explanation, leaves no monument, and occupies no space in memory beyond the empty notation in an archived file that almost no one will ever read.